PHL 17 presents In Focus, a look at the issues affecting the Philadelphia region. Now your host, Steve Highsmith.
How do you get to the top of the business world if you are a woman? How solid is the glass ceiling in today's corporate America, and what can you do about it? What does it mean to be a leader? How do you integrate family or personal life and high-powered business success? Good morning, I'm Steve Highsmith, and welcome to In Focus. About 4% of the chief executive officers in this year's list of Fortune 500 companies are women. The number does not move much when you go to the second set of 500, companies 501 through 1,000. The percentage of those companies having CEOs who are women is about 5%. How much is that the whole story? With me now is Diane Cashin, President and Chief Executive Officer of True North Enterprises and author of a new book called Why You Didn't Get the Job, a women's guide to navigating her way to the top. Diane, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Now, let's deal with perceptions. Let's deal with how people should look at your book. Is this book for everybody? Is it for all women?
Actually, no. It's for women who have a desire to be a leader and women who know that there's more, and they may have plateaued and they want to figure out how to get to the next step, or they have aspirations of being in the C-level, the senior executive level, or the boardroom.
Would you consider this book dispassionately to be anti-men, or would it be a value for men to read?
You know, I think all men should read it because women are complex and we're not supposed to be like men, right? Thank goodness. But there's insights in here that help them see the way women think, where they struggle, where they get stuck, and what their aspirational goals are. And they get frustrated, and women spend a lot of time trying to figure out why and how. And I think men would really benefit understanding what women are all about and what they're trying to create in the business environment, and then they can be better together.
Would it be fair to say that both men and women are still struggling at this stage about what the definition of equality is, equality and opportunity, while still recognizing differences in the genders?
Yeah, a lot of corporations moved away from the term of diversity because it really excluded male population and certainly the white male, right? There were lots of diverse groups. So now they moved to inclusion and diversity. And so everyone's voice gets to be heard. But when we look at equality, it's a complicated equation. It's not as if there's something happening up there that men are creating this structure that is blocking equality from happening.
But men have created, generally speaking, the business structure that has existed for centuries.
That is true. And what I'm pointing to is that you have to understand that structure, and you have to understand where you are, right, and what that structure requires. And you'll then get aware of what your gaps are. Then you can focus on addressing the gaps. That will increase your probability of getting promoted. But it's not as if there's some strategy up there that's intentionally blocking, you from being successful.
You have in your book a list of 10 items, 10 steps, and I'd like to go through as many of those steps as we can. Now, you have sub-layers in those steps, which is why the book is actually interesting to read, because there are nuances to all of these things. But the first step is, who are you? What do you want? The second, know your value to your leaders, and 3, executive presence. Let's begin with the first. When you're asking that, you say every woman should ask, who am I? And what does that mean?
You know, I coach a lot of female executives and women who want to be executives. And I start every conversation, I say, what do you want? And you'd be amazed at how many women really don't know how to answer that question because they've gotten diluted in their focus. Their mothers, their wives, their daughters, they may be taking care of elderly family members. So they forget about that clarity. What do you want? And if you don't know what you want, you have to get clear on that because people won't be able to follow you. But even more than that, let's go back one step. Who are you? What are your innate gifts? What do you do really well? What comes easy and effortlessly to you? So then you know to activate from that place and then overlay on top of that what you want.
Is
so
it
who
your
are you and what you want?
experience that women are able to accurately judge their own strengths and their own perceptions of themselves that others would see as well?
Yeah. Actually, they're a great witness to their flaws, and women have what I call head trash. So, yeah, and a lot of women appreciate that because it's an accurate representation. We are multitaskers by nature. We have a lot of things going on in our head. So we tend to overthink a lot of different things. And the place that they need to get refocused on is looking at, well, how do I know who I am and what I want from that place? They have a lot of negativity. They can focus on that. They don't necessarily know their greatness. So I actually, through the process, invite them to reach out to people to ask them that. What do I do really well? What are my business strengths? What are my personal strengths?
Executive presence is the third item on your list. What do you mean by that?
It's how you show up. Once you know who you are and what you want, you'll enter a room very differently than if you don't have that foundation. Women tend to be fear-based, right? They're afraid of being judged, afraid of failing. Women are used to striving in school to get an A. The whole image, right? The way you need to look.
Is that part of that overanalyzing?
Yeah, they overanalyze, they overperform, and they put a ton of pressure on themselves. So what happens is that comes into the room as well. And they may not realize it, but that is being witnessed by others as well. So they come across as less confident, distracted, instead of, I know who I am, I know what I want, I can show up with ease, grace, peace, confidence, and wisdom, and represent myself that way, versus being all twisted up in my head about performance.
Can women make an error, though, in recognizing what you just said and then overcorrecting by, for example, saying, well, I must go in there and I must be very serious, right, and I must be in charge, and I must lead like General Patton would lead?
Right. Yeah. You know, that was probably the biggest learning for me when I was a high potential candidate. And I was kind of getting plateaued and interviewing for jobs and I wasn't getting them. And I thought, what is that about? So I get stuck in the why and the how. And the result of that, Steve, was I started overperforming. I started analyzing data more. My presentations were flawless. I was on my game. I had the answer to everything. And really what was showing up was I became serious and direct and kind of righteous, right? Because I was trying to show how smart I was, and it was actually creating the opposite effect. I was repelling people.
So the fun Diane wasn't allowed.
No, right? I couldn't have those two things in the space. Women
must remember that no matter, while they have to be good at the job, they also have to be likable?
Exactly. Yeah, and so it's exactly that piece of it, is people want to have dinner with, who would want to have dinner with you, right? The conversation should be light and easy. People want to, have that connection with you. So when you create that likability factor and then you share some of the business elements, right, people are going to see your wisdom is going to show up, right? You didn't get to that place where you are now without being capable. But you have to add the likability factor to it.
Is that unfair to ask for all of this? We still want all the professionalism and all the answers, or do we not want, we don't care if all the answers are there? What are you saying to back off on a little bit?
I think the striving, doing, pushing, persevering, performing, we need to lighten up. And part of that is to be comfortable with making mistakes. Like, take risks, make mistakes. It's okay. If you have a plan B, you're going to be all right. But if you're constantly pushing. That's one of the things that was interesting in your book. You said that you found that, and these are all generalizations, but that women want to have every question answered before recommending a course of action, whereas men are more inclined to say, yeah, I got enough answers there. Go ahead and do that one. Yeah, and it shows up everywhere for women. Like, they won't interview for a job sometimes because they're like, I've never done that before. Whereas a guy will say, I'm really smart, I get this, and I can learn the piece I don't. So for women, they tend to look at, I have to be perfect, and I'm afraid to make a mistake, because if I don't have all the information, then, I'm vulnerable. We're like, take risks, make mistakes. That's what most of the CEOs ask me to coach women around, is risk taking.
What about the communication skills in terms of everything from dress to voice to look? How are we in the 21st century, supposed to deal with that in a way that is fair as a woman and for women?
Yeah, that was probably one of the hardest topics for me to approach from a place of sisterly love, like taking another woman aside to say, your fashion is not serving you, right? So save some of the things that are fabulous on the runway for evening, when you're going on a date, or you're at a women's networking event, like, wear it then. But if you notice the way men show up, right? Even in the dead of summer, men are wearing suits and ties. So I invite women, if you really want to get to that next place of leadership, you got to kind of put the uniform on too. So always have that polished look about you. And I go so far as to tell them what things are appropriate to wear, what things aren't appropriate to wear. And I have a lot of fun with that in the book. And it was a scary place. I didn't think women were going to like it, but all the feedback I got was, you're exactly right. If I want to go from good to great or great to extraordinary, and I really want to break through, I've got to show up that way in my appearance and my attire, in addition to my leadership style showing up.
There's an inherent conflict there, isn't there? Particularly though when you're younger, if you're in your late teens or in your 20s and you're starting out and you want to be yourself. You ask that very first question, who are you? And they go, well, I'm an independent person, I'm me, this is how I express myself. And then you run up into that buzzsaw of, but this is the way the world is. Yeah,
and you have to reconcile that. But here's the good thing. If you know who you are and what you want, and you bump up into that, you then have a choice. right? And you can say, oh, I don't want to put that uniform on or fit in that construct, and you get the awareness to then go find a position that you can wear what you want or do what you want and be more aligned with your authentic
Well,
self.
with that in mind, the second step on your list is know your leaders. What do you mean by that?
You know, a lot of folks, when they're working, they think it's all about them and their performance, right? Go back to the performance thing. But really what it's about is making a difference, I believe, for your leaders. Like, how do I get my leader promoted? How do I show up in a way that makes a difference for them? Am I aligned? Am I able to articulate in a moment's notice if I pass my leader in the hallway, hey, let me tell you what's going on in my business and how that is making a difference for you? So it has to be about your leaders, it has to be about your company, it has to be about your shareholders, most importantly, it has to be about the clients.
When you talk about knowing who you are, should you have confidence in going in and asking for a raise, and how do you go about doing that?
I love this topic because when you look at the way women go in and out of business, right, by the time we start and then we become mothers and we take a break and so on, by the time we get to retirement, we're way back on our number in terms of investment. And part of that starts from right out of college, that the way women negotiate is usually 20-25% less than a man. So my counsel to most women is what they tend to do is when they go in, they say, well, what do I think I need? You know, how much do I need? A man works in and says, this is what I'm worth and this is what I deserve. So there's a gap in the way they start right out of the gate. And that then follows them in terms of incremental percentages of increases. And then when women take breaks and men keep going on, by the time they get to retirement age, there's a gap in investment.
But there is, you can't really bluff in business. You can a little bit. But for the most part, men seem to be, in my experience, more willing to leave. To say, okay, I've asked for this, and you're not giving it to me, I'm leaving. Are women as inclined to do that?
No. No, women tend to be loyal and nurturers and caregivers, so who they are as in the family construct sometimes shows up in the work environment. And if they are working, a lot of the statistics now are showing they are significant breadwinners, and with many single parent families now, right, women will endure a lot of different things and stay where they are. But the element for the women that are want to play a big game, that want to read this book, my counsel to them is you have to be able to negotiate. And you have to have that, take away the fear, right, of this is what I think I need, and get to the place of what you think you're worth.
I want to go over more of the steps that you have and talk more with Diane Cashin. More women at the top of the business field, including more action steps from Diane Cashin ahead on In Focus on PHL 17. But for those majorities or numerical advantages, they fade as women age. Back on In Focus, I'm Steve Highsmith. We're talking about how women can increase the chances of attaining high-level, high-powered success in business, shattering the still pervasive glass ceiling, at least in corporate America. Small business may be a different matter. With me is businesswoman Diane Cashin, author of the book, Why You Didn't Get the Job, A Woman's Guide to Navigating Her Way to the Top. Is there a difference, you think, between corporate America and small business America?
Very much so. The structures often in corporate America, there's a lot of the structure was created by men, and women don't necessarily know how to play the rules by those game rules. When you go into a small or a medium business, you really get a chance to be entrepreneurial and create and nurture and innovate and step up as a leader, right, in that space.
And so a woman has to sell herself. So you say, have your commercial ready. What do you mean by that?
You know, the term elevator pitch I don't like so much because the thought of being trapped in an elevator with someone, forcing something on you is not a pleasant thing. But how is it that you're promoting yourself? And even more so, how is it that you have a wingman or a wingwoman that's promoting you, which is even more important. But when you pass someone that you know that you're trying to have an impact in their business, how are you telling them? Because a lot of women are very uncomfortable with that because they feel like they're bragging, and that comes very naturally for men. Hey, let me tell you what I did, on that account, right? So women need to actually practice that and have a commercial-like presentation that says, this is what I've done.
Well, let's go over some more of your steps. You have 10 action steps in your book, and we've gone through a list of 3, generally speaking. Number 4, put yourself first. Number 5, leadership. And number 6, meet people where they are. Put yourself first. What does that mean in your view?
Women tend to wake up every morning, and before their eyes are open, they have a list of to-dos in their head, and way at the bottom of them might be something for themselves. They're thinking about dinner and these kids and school projects and what they need to get done at work, so they become the ultimate time management experts. But at the end of it, they're not taking care of themselves, but it's like an inverted pyramid, right? So everything in their life is precariously balanced on them, and they're not taking care of themselves in terms of maybe nutrition, exercise, what I call leader care. What are they doing? Are they getting a way to disconnect from it all, take care of themselves? When they do that, they're gonna have more to give to others, but it's usually the other way around. There's a lot given to family, children, work, and then there's a little bit left for them.
What about leadership?
Okay. Leadership, this is like their gifts, right? Do they understand what it really takes to be a leader? So for example, a lot of women aren't numbers oriented. And when you're moving up to the senior levels, you really have to speak the language of business. So are you taking the right financial courses? Do you understand the accounting rules? Do you speak the language of business? Are you cultivating innovation, right? What kind of messaging do you bring? Are you more tactical in your message? Well, that's more managerial. When you get to the leadership level, you have to talk about the vision and the strategy. You're always forward-looking. You're always enrolling people in what's possible, while sometimes in the day-to-day, you're caught in the run rate of the business and the tactical execution. But leaders are always moving the conversation forward, and they're always talking about the vision and strategy and what's possible and where you're going.
Do women sometimes feel more than men solitary in the ascent, and do women have to be more conscious of the fact they need to bring others, enroll others along with them as they rise?
One of the things I invite women to do is they have to socialize their concepts more. Like I have an idea and you socialize it with a group of individuals and you ask for sponsorship around it. But they tend to be more isolated. And that's a piece that they really need to change. So that kind of gets into relationships with a purpose a bit and the power of networking. But how do you socialize your ideas and get people to support it and sponsor it?
What do you mean by meet people where they are?
I love this topic because I travel the world and every culture is so fascinating. So when you get into a corporate environment, it can be kind of scary, right? You have people of different genders, ethnicities, they're from cultures around the world. They may not speak the same way that you do. And it's really this wonderful opportunity as a leader to show that you hear and see and spend time and you're really letting everyone's best and greatest attributes participate to the business. So everyone gets to play. Everyone gets to participate. No one gets
So my way or the highway doesn't work?
You know, we all have those experiences where there's the strong voice in the room, maybe this person pounding the desk, maybe the person leaning in, and the rest of the folks will go, well, I'll just sit and suffer through the meeting, but we don't get to hear their voice. And that's where real leaders get to come in and say, you know, Sally, Fred, you know, share with me what you think, right? And let them finish, let them be heard, and invite an interesting conversation. So the leader has to kind of manage the stronger players in the voice, you know, in the room rather, and manage that, and then let the other people be heard and invite that diversity and cultivate it.
But there are two levels to that, are there not? The first is doing what you just said, but that can maybe seem almost like a game. The second level is actually listening to what they said and incorporating what these others say into your decision making.
That's true.
That's not easy.
No,
Particularly if you've been successful and you think you know the answers.
That's, you know, there are so many leaders that actually I coach for that very reason. It becomes command and control. So what happens for really smart people that show up at a meeting with a leader who has a fear-based performance that I have to have the answers, right? I'm the leader, I should know the answers. Everyone in the room stops thinking. They're like, I'll just bring a pen and a paper and I'll just wait to be told what to do. Right, so a really powerful leader, those who really move up high, they're very open, they ask brilliant questions, they do more asking than speaking, and they let the room come up with the ideas, and then they incorporate that into the way forward.
Well, let's take some more steps from a woman's guide. These are steps 7 through 10. Understanding and managing conflict. A 360-degree leader gives back, relationships with a purpose, and navigating your journey. Understanding and managing conflict.
Women do not like confrontation in the workplace. So it's how they relate to it. They actually see it as a conflict. And if they could shift their relationship to there's an impassioned discussion going on that's important for the success or growth of the company or important to a client, if you relate to it as something that's important, again, to move us forward versus there's tension and conflict, they need to create that shift. A lot of women, when there's conflict, will either fight, right? They get into fight or flight. That's not helping them. And in those moments, they lose their voice. So, but if you want to really be a leader, you have to have your voice. So part of it is, how do you get what we call flat and detached? Like, really be present to the conversation, understand the need behind the request, hear what everyone is saying, ask really great questions in conflict. And usually the moment you're most triggered, because there seems to be this energy in the room, that's the moment I usually say to my clients, don't speak then. When you feel really passionate that you're just going to burst if you don't say it, that's the wrong time to speak. In those moments, ask questions that start with what if, or what is possible, or help me understand. Then you gather that information in, and suddenly it's not a conflict anymore. You're having a conversation with somebody, you're seeking to understand it. Then you can come in and say, here's some things I invite you to enroll in, or how we can move forward.
What is this Leaders Give Back thing?
So, especially for women, as we're looking for the support of mentors and coaches and individuals to help us on our journey, it's important that they give back. So I invite women to join in the community, right, to girls' organizations to empower girls in their industry, right, let them see what they can be. So if they can see it, they can be it. I invite them to get out there and speak in the industry, representing their company or some other hobby that they're passionate in. That then continues to pay it forward for other generations to see, this is what a great leader looks like, this is what they do. And it's not about them all the time, it's about making a difference in the world, whether that's in their industry or in a philanthropic way. All
right, in 10 seconds, what's relationships with a purpose?
This is, women tend to have the way we relate is, I love your handbag, I love your shoes, how have you been? Relationships with a purpose is really looking at your relationships from a business perspective. How are you helping each other be successful? What do you need for your business to grow?
More with Diane Cashin in a moment on PHL 17. Stay tuned. In Focus continues on PHL 17 with Diane Cashin, author of Why You Didn't Get the Job, A Woman's Guide to Navigating Her Way to the Top. Navigating your journey is step number 10.
Probably, the second most important step after knowing who you are and what you want is really understanding the environment that you work in. Right? What are the rules of the game? Who are the advocates? Who are your friends and foes? Who are the people that are aligned with the strategy, the vision, and how we're going to get there? One of the things you asked me earlier about women staying in positions, I focus a lot of time in the book around, if you understand what's happening in the environment and everything's aligned with your aspirational goals and your leadership is in place, accelerate, really work that environment quickly and bring value there and look for the opportunities to get promoted. But don't be naive. If they've changed leadership or you find yourself in a place, or maybe you've jumped because you're fearless and you jump into a role and suddenly you're like, oh, this isn't the coat that fits. Don't stay too long, because ultimately that will work itself out. You'll either find yourself on a reduction in force or you'll be moved out or something along those lines. So be clear, right? Understand the rules of the game, understand who the players are, understand when the fit is there, and understand when it's not. And don't be afraid to leave, right?
And the difficult thing is, though, that gets to the fundamental question that's in your book, which is this integration of the successful business life with personal life. And where do you start with that? How do you start asking the right question?
Right, and I like that you say integrated instead of work-life balance, because it's not a switch. I know for a lot of women, they don't get their best ideas between 9 to 5, right? It happens all the time. So you have to integrate what your leader care is, right? Family, friends, they're a real priority because that's what life is always about. But from a work perspective, I tend to work 24/7, play 24/7. Is the way I look at it. And I fit it in where it needs to be, because I don't have that binary on and off switch. So if I work a couple hours on the Saturday, for example, that may give me actually peace and relaxation because I'm getting things out of the way versus trying to fit everything into, say, 9 to 5, or most of us are working like 7 to 7, 7 to 8. Yeah.
And for the woman who says, this all sounds great, I'm inspired, I'm ready to move on, what's the first obstacle someone usually hits when they think they're on the right path, but then they go, oops, I didn't expect this?
Yeah, a lot of women don't ask for help. So as I shared earlier, leaders are always in the gap, right? Here I am now, and 2-3 years I want to be there. So they're very comfortable in the gap, but you need a structure in the gap. You need the people that are going to mentor or coach you. You need people that are going to help you with the expertise. You need to get involved in projects that are going to demonstrate you have the capability to get there. So it's asking for help and having a structure to support your success.
And it's all right in that to ask your significant other for help in a lot of different levels or ways.
Thank you for mentioning that. I was at Deloitte last night in an event, and one of the women said the only way she could have done it is with the support of her partner, with her husband. And you know, I don't mention that in the book, and I thought I've probably got to go back and make some revisions there. But it is important because it takes that balance at home to take care of family, friends, each other, so that you can both have, you know, what your career goals are.
I think it's kind of, I don't know if funny is the right word, but in your book you also thank the people who made it difficult for you, threw obstacles your way. Why?
You know, in those moments you get to reflect, learn, ask questions, but you get to grow. And it's in those moments you get wisdom, right? When everything's going perfect and smooth, you're not really looking at it closely enough. It's something that's actually occurring. But when it breaks or something is an obstacle, you got to take a look. And that requires you to do the hard work and reflect and step up and be responsible for yourself. And you get, great, now that I see it, I can do something about it.
Diane Cashin, thank you very much.
Thank
it's been
you
really
so
interesting.
much, Steve. It was
Thank
lovely
you.
speaking with you.
Good luck. Hope to see you again soon. That's In Focus for this week. Thank you for watching. I'm Steve Highsmith. Enjoy your weekend and have a great week ahead.